took it to show Lou Grade. And my heart was thumping because I'd spent a fortune on this thing. And he said, "Gerry, this is not a television series. Gerry, this is a feature film."
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Thunderbirds are go.
The 30th of September, 1965, Thunderbird burst onto television screens for the very first time. Well, actually it launched on Dutch television first.
Thunderbirds, gestart!
But we'll ignore that for the anniversary celebrations.
Yeah, lady.
The show was an instant success, with the first episode, Trapped in the Sky, introducing several new elements into popular culture, from the instantly memorable theme to the designs and highly unusual launches of the Thunderbird machines. Above all, it's an exciting, inventive piece of television with exceptional craftsmanship on display across many different disciplines. Looking at the first scene alone, with its sinister music and grandiose set, it's easy to see why Lou Grade was impressed. It has genuine feature film qualities. However, and it may seem like sacrilege to criticise such an influential piece of television, the episode does have several odd structural issues, likely unnoticed by its original audience, but increasingly evident on subsequent viewings. For instance, why does the plot take great pains to set up Tintin and her fellow passengers, only to forget about them halfway through? Why does Jeff Tracy effectively receive 3 introductory scenes? And why does the first advert break end on a dramatic cliffhanger, revealing to the audience something they've already known for the last 10 minutes?
If this doesn't bring international rescue on the scene, nothing will.
These and other minor plot peculiarities seem particularly odd when you consider that Gerry and Sylvia Anderson were quite good at writing pilot episodes. How many other writers could get away with writing a dramatic staring contest with a fish? They were also skilled at introducing the various regular characters and establishing the setup of the organisation they worked for. Yet here, a lot is to be taken on inference. All of these quirks become much more understandable, though, when you discover that Trapped in the Sky was originally intended to run for half an hour. Suddenly it all makes sense. And ever since then, fans have speculated what might have been in the original 25-minute cut, even having a go at making their own versions. The TX-204 rescue attempt is clear padding, so we can delete most of Reel 3. Case closed. Or is it? While there's ample proof that other episodes were originally 25 minutes long, the evidence for Trapped points somewhat in the opposite direction. Many scenes that are clearly padding were definitely there in 1964 before Lou Grade saw it. So did he in fact see the hour-length version of that screening, and was that what persuaded him that the rest of the series should also be an hour? We haven't got all the facts, but we'll piece together what we do know, and where we don't know, we'll simply declare,
Oh, I haven't a clue, darling, haven't a clue.
Let's go back to early 1964. Stingray, the as-yet unbroadcast colour extravaganza, was slowly nearing end of production at the AP Film Studio in Slough. It was due to start on British television later that year, but for the Andersons, as was their wont, it was already old news, and off they went to their home in Albufeira in Portugal to write the first episode of their new TV series International Rescue, inspired by the Lenga de mine disaster of 1963. When they returned, scripts were distributed to the various departments. Troy Tempest and Stingray were out. Tracy family and Rescues 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5 were in. The design work started, and the potential writers were furnished with some early drawings to burnish their imaginations. Gerry eventually retitled the series, and the heroic vehicles of the near future, Thunderbirds, after recollecting a letter his brother had written in 1942 about being an extra in a film called Thunderbirds. Now, it's not known exactly when this change took place, because while the change should be enacted before filming commenced, scripts were still referring to Rescues 1 to 5 in scripts as late as episode 9. The interesting thing about the few fragments of script that survive from those early 25-minute instalments is that they were found at the house of John and Jean Taylor, the sound recordists, which suggests the voice recordings originally made use of these scripts. In the summer of 1964, a long period of shooting commenced. Not just for the first episode, but for the highly complicated stock shots of launch sequences that would be required throughout the series. Thanks to special effects cameraman Michael Wilson, we can see a little of the work involved thanks to film material he retained. Great pains were taken to get it technically right. Stingray was yet to be transmitted, and there remained worries about not just how the show would look in black and white in England, but how it would look in colour territories like America and Japan.
Release injected to you.
It was very exciting. There was just one thing that to really upset me, and that was that we would shoot in colour. We would get a colour print of the finished picture. They would make up to 5 prints of the whole film, adjusting the colours in the laboratory until they met with our total satisfaction. And then we would say, yes, that looks absolutely wonderful. Will you now make a black and white negative, please? Because we've got to make black and white prints for release. And so we were screening them here in black and white and in America in colour.
But it wasn't just the technical side that interested them. Whatever the financial constraints, they wanted to get it artistically right. In this series of test strips, we can see how Thunderbird 1 was tried out in different iterations. Viewers have often commented on the quarter rotation Thunderbird 1 makes between shots, but it seems this was no mere accident. As so often in Thunderbirds, the artistic value of a single shot was held to be more important than continuity, which most viewers would miss on a single viewing anyway. This quarter rotation continuity error was later corrected for Thunderbirds Argo, but it's clear when it was originally shot, a firm editorial decision was made after several tests that it was better always to have the Thunderbird 1 lettering facing towards the audience. Style over continuity or logic is something that perhaps could explain various peculiarities in the series, such as why the International Rescue lettering on Thunderbird 5 faces inwards rather than outwards. Surely John knows where he is, doesn't he? A whole bank of potential stock shots were filmed, including a few which were only used once or twice through the series. Talking of special effects, the versions shown on television are often slightly cropped in order to avoid showing the edge of the frames and revealing the things that the technicians wanted to hide. However, if we pull out slightly and reveal the full frame, we can see little hints as to how the magic was achieved, including the top of the rolling and static sky backings, bits of missing set, and how the Hood's getaway really ended. Another piece of unseen Thunderbirds, known to fans of the mini-albums, are these 2 extracts of dialogue on the soundtrack release, narrated by Scott Tracy.
Mobile Control, this is Thunderbird 2, approaching London Airport.
Okay, Virgil, you're clear to land. The airport is closed to all traffic during this emergency.
FAB, touching down on end of 29.
They're trying to dislodge the bomb by aerobatics, but they're not having much success.
But from what you say, John, we're the only ones that can save them. We better bring up our heavy equipment. It looks like we're going to need it. I'll contact Father on the TV portrait.
Go ahead, Scott.
I'll be arriving at London Airport in 52 minutes.
And now for a genuine, never previously seen clip from Thunderbirds. As we mentioned in the last episode, recently we rescued 22 cans of films that originated from AP Films. That haul included these 2 cans of Trapped in the Sky, and on them were 3 scenes that were not as broadcast. Ready?
Any more news?
Yes, Scott. John's reported in from the space station that a rescue attempt is going to be made. It seems from transmissions intercepted that they are going to try and put a man aboard Fireflash. How, we don't yet know. But continue on your present course. It doesn't look too hopeful.
Well, let's hope they succeed. I'll keep in touch.
Yes, that surprised us too. However, the clues were always there, as eagle-eyed viewers may have spotted. Here, in Pit of Peril, we can see clearly that the puppet images have been cut out. The most extraordinary thing about this is that they clearly continued with this for a couple of episodes before someone decides to change it, which is a good thing, because it's a bit disturbing.
Go ahead, John.
We have our first emergency call, Father. The new Fireflash Max 6 atomic airliner is in distress at London Airport.
The Fireflash? Why, that's Tintin's aircraft.
But how does any of this prove Trapped in the Sky was always an hour? Well, the film material from Michael Wilson reveals a lot previously unknown. First, they offer an insight into various shots that were either rejected or just didn't make the final cut, including this unsuccessful attempt to sell perspective by having the large and small elevator cars in the same shot. But they also show that material, apparently clearly added on later, was in fact shot in 1964. That includes Bob Meddings' failed rescue attempt. In the context of the rest of the series, it's easy to see why this might feel like filler material, but viewed as a single episode made before everything else, it does make sense to show that mere mortals fail where international rescue will succeed. It's not like the following week, where General Peters embarks on a series of suicidal missions to toast various members of his crew rather than call for outside help.
Ah! Come on, get him up!
Now, it's possible that it wasn't large chunks grafted on, as was the case for other episodes, but perhaps individual small sequences scattered throughout. We know from Michael Wilson's collection that the major effects sequences were shot in 1964, including the establishing shot of the Hood's temple, so he was definitely in it. But do a few fragments of film prove conclusively the episode was an hour? Well, maybe not, but perhaps this does. For each of the Super Mario Nation shows, Barry Gray would specially compose music for a handful of episodes. These cues could be re-edited for the remaining shows. Being the pilot, Trapped in the Sky had its own bespoke score, which was recorded on the 8th of December 1964 across a 4-hour session. 4-hour sessions were the norm for Stingray, usually to cover 2 episodes though. But here, Trapped was granted a solo session. Before writing the music, Gray would view the episode and record meticulously the scene description and what sort of music would be required. Each cue was accorded a code number according to the reel. So for instance, 2M3 would be reel 2, Q3. So for instance, 1M2C, exciting IR drums for 45 foot, end on forte beat.
Miss Tintin Carano.
Although these notes don't have a date on them, they must have been written before the music had been composed, and these notes clearly describe the 50-minute episode as we know it. Had the episode been re-edited later, it seems likely that extra music would have been written, or that it would have cues from other episodes to help cover new transitional moments. But the score that was recorded in December 1964 was not added to. In fact, certain sections didn't even make the final cut. Crew members asked about this over the years were divided on whether Trapped had been 25 minutes originally. Editor David Lane says Lou saw a half-hour version, but director Alan Patillo remembered it being a possible 2-parter. So, if it was always an hour, how do we explain the sometimes idiosyncratic construction? Our theory? It was an overlong script that grew organically. Overlong scripts weren't unusual at AP Films. Plant of Doom, the second episode of Stingray, had a script that ran to 46 pages, way over the 25 to 30 pages that would have been considered standard. Thunderbirds had a complicated setup to explain, with a huge number of regular characters and several hero vehicles, so it may have been tricky just to get this pilot instalment down to a satisfactory length. Certainly this is borne out by the final episode running to 52 minutes, some 3 or 4 minutes longer than other Thunderbirds instalments. Perhaps most importantly though, several crew members have described seeing the rushes for the first time and feeling, to quote David Lane, that we were onto a winner. And that's something Lou Gray certainly agreed with. Even after 60 years, it's difficult to disagree with Lou's assessment. It really was a feature film. Next week, we'll be taking a closer look at Vault of Death and examining how that went from 25 minutes to 50 minutes. But if that wasn't enough esoteric information for you about Trapped in the Sky, perhaps you might enjoy this last technical observation. Upon examination of this print of Trapped in the Sky, not only did we find that the wall portraits had been redone, but also that the optical effect for the split screen between Lady Penelope and Scott had also been redone. This one's particularly curious as the final version, as used in the transmitted episode, actually introduces a sync error which is not present in this earlier print. And now we'll leave you with this side-by-side comparison. We told you it was esoteric.
Control calling International Rescue, England.
International Rescue. Lady Penelope speaking.
Require your assistance. Man with photographic records of Thunderbird 1 proceeding along M1 motorway in your direction. Car registration 695 CMO.
Over.
Mobile control. FAB.